Evening all, Daniel Hand, RPG therapist, and today we're going to pull it all together. Over recent videos, we've developed our story trinity from the ground up. We've got a character to represent our client in the story. We've got a setting that sets the rules of the story and puts everything in the game into context. And we've got an obstacle or series of obstacles to actually give the character something to do, and so generate some engagement and enjoyment. Just to labour the point, take any of these elements away and the story just can't happen. Bring them all together and the story can't not happen. Well, I suppose it could not happen, but it would have to be an active choice on your part not to tell it. And that's what we're going to look at today, taking those three discrete elements and seeing what happens when they come into contact with one another. Because the story is what happens between those three main elements, the synthesis of character and setting, setting and obstacle and character. This is what will dictate both how your story will pan out and how you and your client will end up actually telling it. Quite removed from game mechanics or even dice, this is where the fun and the therapy starts to happen. So let's go. First off, quick question. What is a story? Well, the Devil's Dictionary helpfully gives this definition. Story. A narrative, commonly untrue. Well, that tells us everything, wouldn't you agree? Okay, I'll try again. To quote the late, great Sir Terry Pratchett, stories are a parasitical life form, warping lives in the service only of the story itself. Clear as mud? No? Okay, fine. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, a story is a description, either true or imagined, of a connected series of events. Or, going a bit further back, Aristotle spoke of poetry as imitation, or more specifically, an imitation of an action and of life. A bugger for the bottle, by all accounts, was Aristotle. Ladies and Bruces. If you know, you know. Give us a thumbs up. So, if we run with the idea that a story, or narrative if you prefer, is concerned primarily with actions or events, this gives credence to the idea that once you've got each element of your story trinity in place, the story itself, and the way you tell it, relies upon the events that come about as a result of the obstacles that appear in the setting, of which the character is a part, and the actions that the character must take to overcome or circumvent them. That's why you often hear film or book critics waxing lyrical about the proactiveness of a particular story's protagonist, or bemoaning said protagonist's lack of it. Because proactive characters are the ones who take that action, and so if we go by Aristotle's definition, these are the characters who actively make the story happen. The events, or set pieces of a story, are the highlights of said character's actions, giving the narrative some context and providing a sense of flow. One event leads via actions to the next, leads to the next, etc. In terms of the story trinity itself, we can see that these actions and events come about as a result of some form of interaction between two or more of the trinity's core elements. An obstacle interfaced with a setting, for example, could be described as an event. Think, for example, a giant blue space laser blasting down from the sky. In anybody's universe, that could certainly be described as a thing that happens. And perhaps more specifically, the reason the story is happening now rather than some other time. The same could be said of a dragon raining acid fire on a village or battlefield, or a giant space battlecruiser coming out of warp. When it comes to a character's relationship with the setting, this provides the stakes, or the reason the character must take some form of action. Somehow, some why, they have a personal vested interest in the world around them, either to keep it all in balance or to unbalance it, so that when that space laser, dragon, or battle cruiser comes along, they have to react in some way. Think a short man with hairy feet who has lived his whole life in a peaceful, secluded paradise only to discover a giant eye is about to destroy the world. Or a young woman whose middle-class life is in peril and is expected to marry a wealthy man to secure her future. Or, even a monk whose sense of justice compels him to investigate local crimes. And interfacing a character with an obstacle will determine the form that the action will take. What the character actually has to do to overcome it. Destroying a bridge to stop a demon of shadow and flame. Taking out a roomful of bank robbers with extreme non-lethal prejudice. Giving the alien helmsman orders to fire photon torpedoes. This, then, is where your completed story trinity becomes a story. We've created our 3 sacred elements, now it's time for them to work their magic. If we think of it in terms of the who, what, why, where, when, how, in creating the client's character, setting, and obstacle, we already have our who, where, and what. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. The event between setting and obstacle is the when. The motivation between character and setting is the why. And the action between character and obstacle is the how. Okay, so that's the theory out of the way. Let's look at the practice. You've watched the past few videos, you've read my book. And now you and your client have a completed story trinity on your hands. How do you squeeze the story out of it? More importantly, how do we squeeze the therapy out of it? Simples. You just play the game. Bit anticlimactic, I know. Okay, fair play, I'll give you a bit more. Your job when it comes to both the storytelling and the gameplay is to contribute to the bottom side of the triangle and keep your eye on what your client gives you for the other 2. If you focus on the setting and the obstacle, the where and the what, as well as the when between them, by which I mean give the client information about what's going on around the character and introduce a prompt of some type. You're walking through a forest when suddenly a dragon jumps out at you. That's enough to let the client take control. And that, after all, is what we're interested in. They can now tell us both how their character acts in response to the threat, and perhaps even talk a little bit about why the character responds as they do. They jump up and grab a sword because they want to protect the nearby village, or they run away because they don't get paid enough for this rubbish. And that right there is a story. A bit threadbare, admittedly, but we're not exactly aiming to be the next Shakespeare here. More to the point, it gives us an opportunity to analyse the client's thoughts and feelings. Sure, the story is interested in the characters, actions and motivations, but we're interested in the clients. And by taking the 3 core elements of the story trinity and mixing them together, we're creating that fictional frame that will give us so much to work with therapeutically. This is why I love the story trinity as a model. It consists of precisely 3 words, and yet it contains every storytelling concept in existence. Aristotle, eat your heart out. But what do you think? After this multi-video crash course in the story trinity, do you feel better equipped to tell a story in your own chosen medium? What kind of story or stories would you like to tell? And how might you make them therapeutic? Let us know in the comments. While you're down there, please do like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new content comes up. Everyone, as usual, thank you so much for watching this video. I really look forward to speaking with you again next week. So until then, take it easy, don't do anything I wouldn't do, and have a good one. Cheers. Everyone, it's here! Role-playing games in psychotherapy, a practitioner's guide by some random bloke called Daniel Hand. Pick up a copy wherever you get your books, and obviously please do leave a 6-star review. I'd much appreciate it.